It's officially the season that beat reporters start running wild and everyone starts overanalyzing stories. Just remember last year, Kyron taking kick returns, or a few years ago, Jamar Chase can't catch all of a sudden after taking a whole year off at LSU. Let's take a look at some hype trains going on this season and try to determine which ones I feel confident in, which ones we can kind of, not put as much hype into it. First up, we got the number one most traded player on the Dynasty Daddy. Shout outs to myself. Dynasty Daddy trade database. George Pickens, currently sitting at wide receiver 28 on KeepTradeCut and wide receiver 31 on our very own Dynasty Daddy trade values, which are coming out in August. Probably be out by the time this video is put together. But those use real trades from our trade database and startup draft picks in ADP to build a 24/7 trade values. So pretty similar to KeepTradeCut. He is a player that everyone kind of has an opinion on right now. If we look at his last year production, he had 134 fantasy points, 103 targets, 59 receptions, 900 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. All I've been hearing from beat reporters, Cowboys are very impressed with what George Pickens is currently putting out there. Here is the case for why you should be buying George Pickens. Last year, Cowboys were 3rd in passing attempts per game versus Pittsburgh, who was 29th last year. Obviously, the quarterback upgrade. Pickens has never played with someone like a Dak Prescott. On average, the Cowboys had 8 more targets to go around than Pittsburgh did last year. So even though CeeDee Lamb's there, even though George Pickens is definitely the wide receiver 2, 8 more targets to go around, there's a lot more in this offense for Pickens to actually establish himself. If we look at Dallas's scoring defense as well, they were 31st, whereas Pittsburgh was 7th. So it's a similar situation. High passing offense for Pickens and bad defense, so they're going to have to really put up a lot of points. Now, what are the detractors? Well, he is the clear number 2, and he's also on that 1-year deal. So he has a prove-it deal, which hopefully means he'll play well. But we know Jerry Jones with contracts has a good way of making players disgruntled. But he's also not the biggest high target earning wide receiver. So I don't expect him to see a massive value bump, even if he does well. I think his ceiling is going to be capped below the Rashee Rice's kind of like wide receiver 20. Right, he could slowly rise up, but I doubt he's going to break past that line of high-value rookies and young players that have shown sparks and have been these true, kind of PPR machines. I see him kind of like as like a Devonta Smith type. Great number 2, number 3 on my team. Not a locked-in number 1 from a fantasy football upside, but certainly a player that I feel pretty confident in because the passing offense and the defense, while the defense should probably get a little bit better, they're still going to have to put up a ton of points to actually win games. So to me, this is a pretty decent case to hold on to Pickens going into the year. Next up, we got Will's favorite player in the whole world. Not really, but he loves him. Emeka Egbuka.
Or next Evans. I would say next Godwin. This is not tomfoolery. The stuff about Egbuka being able to catch and stride the yak stuff, that is true. Being able to play every position, man, I believe it.
Now playing on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Currently, KeepTradeCut, he's wide receiver 19. And on Dynasty Daddy, our very own, he's wide receiver 20. Everyone saw Baker Mayfield talking all the hype about Emeka Egbuka.
And Emeka Egbuka is an absolute stud.
Ooh,
okay. He's a real deal. I mean, we can plug and play him at any of the 3 receiver spots right now. Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
Hell yeah.
Maybe he is also on a Egbuka island like Will. But right now, Tampa Bay offense, lots of mouths of feeds. That's what people get concerned about. But the hype is starting to build. Egbuka is a first-round draft capital wide receiver. A lot of people are very optimistic. First-round draft capital wide receivers have a very high hit rate, especially when you get into the early 20s, not the late 20 guys. But if we also look at the offensive stats, last year Tampa Bay was 12th in first down pass attempts, 16th in passing attempts overall, and 3rd in offensive TDs, and also 5th in offensive points per game. So I do think if we look at the passing attempts, there could be a little bit of a regression. 3rd in offensive TDs, but also 12th and 16th in a lot of the passing offensive metrics. But the biggest bull case for Egbuka is he does have the insulated value like JSN and Adunze, where people will give him an excuse. If Godwin's hitting, if Evans is hitting, if everyone's out there, there's a lot of mouths to feed. People will give him that mulligan redshirt year that we saw those other players receive. This is where the concerns come in, is we do have another OC, 3 in 3 years for Tampa Bay. So eventually the well's got to dry up, right? You can't just keep having good OCs that turn people's careers around and make high-powered offenses. You would think this could also work in his advantage, where this is a new OC and this is the guy he picked. A big benefit of this whole hype train is kind of like the slow start of Godwin. But once you get Godwin back, there is a lot of mouths to feed when everyone is healthy. So that is a big concern for this year alone. I expect, obviously, down the road, Egbuka is a more long-term piece, but Egbuka right now has a low 2025 floor if Godwin and Evans are healthy for most of it. The vets that produce elite numbers, it's going to be hard to outproduce them. So dynasty-wise, I love Egbuka. He's a guy that I would just be holding. I'd feel confident in him, especially with the upside of if one does get injured. He's one of the few wide receivers that probably would slot in and see a significant role. But do I feel great about him in 2025? Not because the talent, but it's just if Godwin and Evans are healthy, he has that lower floor than another, wide receiver 2 within his range at his current price of wide receiver 19. It's a steep amount if you need him to produce. So it's kind of situational based on your rosters. Next up, Chase Brown, KTC RB11 and Dynasty Daddy RB14. Obviously, Chase Brown was someone that everyone was scared to touch. Pre-draft, everyone's like, okay, they're going to definitely bring in somebody. And all they brought in was Taj Brooks, who, hey, I'm not going to diss on him yet. We haven't seen him at the next level. But that is a great sign for a team that had many other opportunities, many more bites at the apple of a high-value running back. And they said, no, we're going to stick with Chase Brown. If we look at his last year's stats, he had 228 fantasy points, 229 rushing attempts, 990 rushing yards, 7 rushing TDs, and 360 receiving yards. A lot of reports out there saying, hey, Chase Brown is going to be a focal point of this offense. And considering, shouts to the George Pickens section earlier, considering their situations is somewhat similar in terms of high-powered offense with weak defense is amazing for fantasy. So if we look at the stats, last year, Cincinnati was 7th in overall points per game, 30th in rushing attempts, and 31st in rush play percentage, which is saying, okay, cool. If they're really low in rushing attempts, but he still put up solid numbers, there's some room for growth in terms of just the number of rushing plays that team might run. Another benefit was they were 25th in defensive yards per game and scoring defense last year. So again, they have to score a lot. That may hurt a running back versus a wide receiver if they have to pass more, depending on like the game scripts. But we even saw in those blowouts, Chase Brown was finding a way to stay active and involved in that offense. So for me, I do feel pretty confident about Chase Brown going into this year. Here's the bear case. Here's, everyone's just like scared. Don't click away from the video when I say this, but low draft capital. Personally, it's not a huge deal to me, but some people will still hold a grudge. Just look at Kyron. He's been a top, 6 RB the past 2 years or whatever. People are still like, well, he's low draft capital. He might get replaced. We've seen at the next level. I'm not holding that against him, but he will never have that elite value that you see from a lot of those other top running backs. And that's the hard part for me when buying Chase Brown in a dynasty league, is I look at his value currently KTC 11, Dynasty Daddy 14. I can't see it get much higher. It's similar to my Bucky Irving logic of, okay, are you putting Bucky over A-Chain or over Gibbs? Probably not. Are you putting Chase Brown over Jonathan Taylor? Probably not. And that's kind of the hard part when it comes to Chase Brown, is swallowing the dynasty value pill. That being said, if I do need to extract value from a player, I would certainly look to be moving Chase Brown. But if I have to rely on him, I wouldn't feel bad going into this year. Another thing, too, is he's not an elite profile, meaning that he does need to have a significant workload to produce solid fantasy numbers. 30th in rush attempts, 31st in rush play percentage. If a Taj Brooks or a Samaje Perine start taking a cut that's, 30% or more, we're going to see Chase Brown not be that locked and loaded guy that we knew at the end of last year. Okay. Let's get weird with it. These are some players, and I'm just going to say, first off, I don't necessarily believe in either of these offenses at a high level. But these next two players are two players, to me, I think if I do want to have a bite at the apple, have huge upside and have great value. So first, let's start with Demario Douglas, Pop himself. KTC wide receiver, 67 and Dynasty Daddy 66. Last year, he had 114 fantasy points, 87 targets, 66 receptions, 621 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. Reports out there are saying Demario Douglas is far and away the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots. And there's a lot of uncertainty around this Patriots offense, but there's some benefits that we can look into. First off, this offense has to get better. Half the year with Drake May, things started trending the right way, but last year they were 30th in points per game, 25th in passing attempts. Can't get much worse. It can't get much worse. I'm not saying the Patriots are going to be amazing. Some people are like Koff, Bill Simmons. But some people believe that the Patriots are going to turn this all around to be like a top 16 offense. I'm not saying that, but even if they're 25 to 20th in passing offense, that will be a significant growth from a fantasy upside for a lot of these wide receivers. If we look at a full season of Drake May, I expect these numbers to be raised. Another thing is there's no serious marquee like blue chip guy that out-compete Demario Douglas. There's a bunch of kind of like meh guys. There's Javon Baker, there's Polk, there's Cardi B, Stephon Diggs deal going on, but like still it's like a 30-year-old wide receiver off an ACL injury. There's not like a locked-in guy that I feel super good about outside of like Hunter Henry, but like Hunter Henry's not going to out-target Demario Douglas. If I look at all those options, he's probably the cheapest option that I feel somewhat confident in. I feel confident saying, hey, can I get him for a pretty cheap deal and walk away with the upside of a Demario Douglas guy that if I really want to be invested in this offense, I can make something out of it. Another thing to consider too is new offensive coordinator. Oftentimes you do have a new coaching staff come in and all of a sudden the offense looks completely new even though the pieces are the same. Great example is CJ Stroud with D'Amico Ryans when he came in. And everyone was like, oh, that's the worst situation in the league. They have some weird front office stuff. No one wants to touch it. Boom, 1 year they turned it around, made it one of the best offenses in the league, and everyone wanted a piece of it then. When I look at this, there's a lot that could go right, and if I could potentially get a wide receiver one, which what reports are saying, for a super cheap deal. I mean, he's going for like a third or seconds and sometimes. Sure, might as well take a dart throw on a player like this in some of my leagues. The downside, though, is we've already seen him play multiple years, and I don't see his value being something that people really believe in, right? Like, I don't think he's a dynasty asset per se. He can be kind of like a Jacoby Myers type where it's like, oh, he's always going to outproduce what his price is, and just kind of know that if I'm taking a bet on him, it's not like I'm going to walk away with a first round pick or something. If he does hit, it's going to be this undervalued player that's going to score me, 10 to 12 points a game, and I feel confident that having him as a flex option. Now, we'll also put a little note here because I got a lot of flack for poo-pooing on Kyle Williams truthers. And I'm not saying he's dead in the water, but I'm also saying players that were picked in his range, we see this every year. I mean, we saw it with Polk last year in the exact same situation. Just because there isn't a true alpha wide receiver one does not mean Kyle Williams has massive upside. Not saying I'm out on him, but everything's not a meme coin. Like, let's wait, see some actual production, and then we'll get back to if Kyle Williams is it or not. Next up, everyone's favorite running back, Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars, currently KeepTradeCut RB42 and Dynasty Daddy running back 44. Last year, he had 125 fantasy points, 168 rushing attempts, 766 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and 54 receiving yards. Okay, I hear it. You hear it. This is one that is messing with my brain, okay? ETN's there. First round draft capital. We've seen him produce well. He's had his ups and downs. They also bring in a new coaching staff, bring in Bashal Tutin, combine winner probably. Dominated combine. Does have a slight fumbling problem, so there's still some unknown there. Basically, it's ambiguous backfield, and what I will say, even if you don't look Tank Bigsby, he's the cheapest option right now. If you want to take a shot at this Jacksonville Jaguars rushing attack, he's currently the cheapest option. And last year, they were 26th in rushing attempts, so we could see that improve, especially with new coaching staff and all of that, better game scripts, all of that. We should see improvement of just general rushing opportunities for these players. And I think, too, another thing is Bigsby plays a very different role than ETN or Tutin. He can be more of that like grinder type back, which will certainly complement whoever kind of wins between Tutin and ETN. So I do feel like there's some safety there, even though he's not the sexiest name and probably the least hyped. That being said, it's a crowded backfield. This could be that penny stock that goes to zero because you were like, okay, I need to get in somewhere. So don't let FOMO drive you, but this is a decent dart throw and an offense that any of these guys could win. And that's kind of what I like. If I need some running back depth, he's a perfect guy I can buy for super cheap, plug into my rankings and just be like, cool. If he hits, that's cool. If not, whatever. But similar to Demario Douglas, we've seen him before. His value upside isn't huge. It's not like Tank Bigsby is going to be the next Bucky Irving or Chase Brown. We've had multiple years of Tank Bigsby. His first year was terrible. Last year was a little bit better. He's very much a guy that fits a role on your team. And if you need to have that any running back on a roster type deal, he's a decent dart thrower, decent option to go after. And now back to our recurring segment, the Rashee Rice corner. Obviously, he's been a talked about player. Currently, KeepTradeCut wide receiver 19, Dynasty Daddy 17. I have to hit the quota. The Rashee Rice bag holders are paying me big time here. But basically what I want to say, and this also applies to Addison, if a suspension that you expected is causing you to panic sell on a Rashee Rice currently, what are you doing? If you bought him or had him, like you knew this was coming. Why are we scared now? Addison, Rice, these guys are holds. Or if you're selling them, don't sell them for a discount. I've seen some people panic sell. Do not. That doesn't make sense to me. We had all this information beforehand. We knew they were getting suspended. Let's just ride it out. And that wraps up this video. There's so much to talk about with the offseason training camp, all the random beat reporters. How much do we put into each of them? So it's fun to sift through the information and kind of find players that I think have some upside and that I'm sort of buying a little bit. If you made it this far, again, I appreciate everything. Do the YouTube stuff, the like, comment, subscribe. That helps the channel grow. We are small, but we are growing, so everything is appreciated here. If you want to see more from us, we got more videos like this coming, as well as we do weekly live streams Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we just break down dynasty trades and rosters and everything. So come by, hang out. It's a fun time. Those are every week. Also got a Discord, so check that out. That should be linked in the description. And of course, DynastyDaddy.com. Free. Get your rosters analyzed, break down everything. Even if you don't watch these videos, definitely check out the site. And until next time, peace.